You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search.
Welcome to the Woman Arising podcast, hosted by Kathy Hartenstein and Zephy Devi, where we elevate and celebrate inspiring women on the rise. In this podcast, we talk to women from all walks of life about their soul's journey, the obstacles they overcame, and how they embody their feminine power. We hope to elevate women's place in the world, showcase their contributions, and provide inspiration for all women to rise to their fullest potential. Today, our guest is Arielle Guttman, founder and director of Sophia Venus. She brings over 40 years of experience in using the language of astrology to help people seek answers and guidance about life's questions. She believes the language of the cosmos, together with earth wisdom, are the beacons of light necessary to guide us to the future that we seek to create. She began her astrological studies in 1974 and has since authored 5 books in the field, including the 2-volume Mythic Astrology series with Kenneth Johnson and the Astrocartography Book of Maps with the late Jim Lewis. More recently, she has authored the groundbreaking volume on Venus called Venus Star Rising, a new cosmology for the 21st century, which introduces the 5 Venus star points. Arielle has lectured and taught around the world for various astrological organizations and schools. She currently divides her time between Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Greece. She offers a range of astrology services, from classical natal chart readings, relationship readings, as well as her unique Venus star readings, and a home study course that leads to professional certification in the Venus star point system. Welcome, Arielle. It is our true pleasure to have you here today. We are excited to learn about the many facets of your work and how you've used astrology to help women illuminate their personal paths.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm very happy to be here. And thank you, Zephy, too, for letting me join in to this collaboration you have going here. It's really my privilege also.
It's our privilege to do. And also, I have to tell our audience that we're good friends and we've been knowing each other for at least a few years. And I was able to experience the star point. And it's amazing, the Venus star point. It's an amazing experience because it shows exactly what our bodies are about. You know, it's the 5 points of our bodies. So it's an amazing gift that you give into the world, Arielle. And I'm really, really excited about that. My first question is, when you first heard that, you know, that I offered this interview about women arising, what did you think? What was the feelings or the emotions or even just the thought? What did you feel about it? Connecting to the star point somehow, isn't it?
Well, I had a very positive response to it when I heard the term woman arising, because I was thinking it has a couple of layers of meaning for me. First of all, in my own life experience, I have seen woman arising through my life. Through each decade, there has been another sort of leap that women have taken. But history and mythology and archaeology has also shown us that at one time women had already risen, had been in great power, had great strength and great power in the world and great influence. And it's sort of like it went to sleep. It went into slumber for, a few thousand years. We refer to the time of the great goddess and all the sacred artifacts that are found. I know, Zephy, you go to Egypt all the time, in India. There's so much goddess presence there in both those places. There is here in Greece also. But Greece was already becoming that changeover point between, the matriarchal and the patriarchal culture changing. But in other words, women arising on that level to me meant that okay, that woman has been slumbering for a long time and she's waking up. And it is my privilege to be born in a time when I can be joining with the sisterhood of women in the world to enjoy this experience of arising, and becoming fluent and in our strength and in our power. And also to see that on the social and political front around the world, that women have taken so many key roles now in places that they could not even when I was growing up, that they did not enjoy back then. So, as I said, even in my lifetime, I've seen, significant progress happening. There's still always more to do, but let's enjoy what we've accomplished so far and where we continue to go. Being a woman is both a privilege and a challenge in the world still.
Well, yeah, it is. It really is. But I think also, as you said, the challenge we can overcome, and that's where the privilege comes in. As we women overcome those challenges, because I know you have overcome many challenges in your life, as the rest of us. So thank you. That's really, really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I love your perspective because, you're saying you've been doing this work for a long time. You've sort of lived this long journey and you can see over all the different decades and times how we've evolved and risen, as you're saying, and that it's an unfolding almost, which is a really beautiful image and idea that some of us will set that ball rolling. And then as it accumulates and grows and expands, we're all benefiting from that energy. So I really love that idea. You've got so much wealth of knowledge in the work that you've done and in the journey that you've taken. And I'm really curious to hear about what that journey of your life was, how you got into the work that you do, what was your experience in doing the things that you've done all over the years, and then how you actually became who you are today to have that ability to share all of that wisdom with others.
Yes, it has been a journey and lots of trials and tribulations, as they say, and we've all had those journeys. But I grew up in a rather conventional family, traditional values, and not highly religious, my particular family, but the community around me was fairly religious. And so there was a sort of way in which, a certain kind of behavior that was imposed on you. But I didn't relate to any of it. I didn't relate to my family, and I didn't relate to my community. I mean, from an early age, I was questioning the education system and what are they teaching us and why? Why is this important? Why do I need to know this? I would get sick and my mother would, take me off to the doctor, this specialist, that specialist, whatever. I didn't like the advice the doctors were giving her, but she believed in them and followed them faithfully. I questioned a lot of things, and to the point where I really thought something must be wrong with me because everybody else seems fine with it. But why doesn't it work for me? So my journey really, and it still is, I'm always questioning. Not that I'm trying to be resisting of things. I've accepted a lot of things, but I know that inside, if it doesn't feel right to me, there's something a little bit off. I have a very high barometer, a very highly sensitive person, which I found out through learning astrology that there was a reason for me being, so highly sensitive. which was considered a liability as a child. I was told all the time, you're too sensitive, you're too sensitive. Just accept it, it's the way it is. But I have something inside me, which is a great thing to have, is this barometer of, it either feels right or it doesn't. And it took a while to learn to really trust that. But I can pretty much say I trust it. I now learn through the years and the decades that don't ignore it. That inner guidance that we all have.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I think having the courage to trust it sometimes can be hard when you're surrounded by, all the people who maybe don't think like you, to really have that courage to do that. What were some of the things that really shaped you, or the obstacles that you overcame along this journey? And how did you find astrology and become so passionate about it?
One of the things that did shape me early on was the idea that women, girls, were treated differently than boys. In my community and in my family, girls were not expected to perform or question or compete. The boys were sort of given, free rein at that. It was encouraged in my school. I remember, I think it was grade school going to middle school or middle school going to high school, but one of those transition periods, we were given 2 exams to see whether we were going to be going into the study of Latin or the study of geometry. Maybe this was common in every school, but I did very well on the mathematics one. I gained a very high score on it, and I did not do well on the language one because it was explained to me that you didn't get the idea of gender. And I thought that was so funny. So then they spoke to my parents, the school spoke to my parents, and they all agreed for me that because she's a girl, she should have Latin studies. She should go into Latin and languages and maybe not go into the advanced math courses because that's more for the boys. And so they decided, even though I didn't get the language thing correctly, that they were still going to put me in that, but not in the math. And I said, well, why can't I do both? If you're going to put me in the language thing, I already excelled in the math thing. Why can't you put me there too? You can only have one, but it wasn't the right one. So in other words, again, I learned the system is kind of skewed. It may have nothing to do with your personal abilities or your will or whatever. It's things are already, decisions are made for you. That was the first time. It wasn't the only time. I remember going to one of the religious organizations too, and seeing that the men were all, given the high holy places in the inner circle, and the women were kept separate. And again, as a small child, I would question that. Why are the women kept out? Oh, well, this is for the men, And so I saw these incongruencies early on. I didn't think they were right. I balked at them, actually. And yeah, even though all those things were happening in the culture, I never felt inside that there was anything I couldn't do because I was a woman. I just sort of went ahead and did it anyway. And other than that little test thing in school where they said, no, because you're a girl, you should go into languages, because you probably, they had like 2 future scenarios mapped out for us. The girls were going to they were going to go on to college and they were going to become teachers or nurses. And that was what most of the girls had in front of them, teachers or nurses, maybe sometimes a social worker. And of course, the boys had everything else. And again, I was looking at that like, and unless you're super talented and super high IQ and very, very intelligent, and there were some girls like that in our in our community that went on and did amazing things, achieved amazing things because of their talent. So I didn't have that kind of talent. I was just one of the average people at the time. But I think why I'm saying all this is because I really didn't think I was anything special. I was made to feel I was nothing special, for one, being a girl, and second, because I did have an older brother, and he was the one who was given all the eggs were put into his basket. And, I had the cracked and broken ones that were left over. In other words, on the one hand, he had to live up to that, which might have been challenging for him. But because there were no expectations placed on me and, preconceived notions of what I needed to do, I was more free to sort of figure it out on my own. And luckily I did.
Well, that sense of freedom was the gift, even in the face of that sort of societal sexism, right? I don't know if young girls experience that in the way that you did today, but it's really important to remember how you had to really forge a path and have that confidence in yourself, because sometimes people can internalize that, right? But you chose the path to say no, and I'm going to go on my path regardless, and that takes a lot of strength. Was there any, as you got older and were coming into your own and kind of forging that path, obstacles that, you really had to overcome? And how did you do that?
I knew that I had to get out of the house early, out of my parents' house, and I wasn't really going to be supported by them for many reasons. Just it was a toxic environment for me. And so I knew I had to earn my own way. And I didn't really know how I was going to do that, but I was juggling education with jobs and, trying to make it on my own. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I wound up working in a law firm. I did leave the town of my birth, and I went to LA. And so I was in the Southern California culture of the early 1970s, and it was very free, very, anything goes. Yeah, I felt really alive. It felt like I was reborn there, actually, that I had just kind of risen from the dead, and came alive again. But still, I wasn't that serious about what am I going to do. I got a good job. I landed a very good job as soon as I got there in a law firm. And the people I worked for liked me. And some of them even said, hey, you're pretty smart. You're doing a good job. You can progress through the ranks. But that really didn't appeal to me. I was like, I can't see myself sitting in a law firm. And I saw the one woman partner among 60 male partners in this very huge firm. This was a firm that had celebrities. They did a lot of accounting, entertainment, lots of things like that. So they were brushing against people that, are like important people, etc. But again, it was like I wasn't feeling it. I was going through the motions of doing the job, but I wasn't feeling it. So eventually, somehow I had a bug in my head. And this is what happens to me. I just get this idea and I can't let it go. And this has been happening my whole life. I'm going to Europe. I'm going to quit my job and go to Europe. And that job, paid me enough money that I was able to save. So I saved up enough. I quit my job to go to Europe. And that changed everything for me. Europe was such a freeing place. Maybe everybody that travels feels that way when they go to another country. It's like because you're not under the restrictions that you are. But it just opened everything for me. I was traveling for 6 months, backpacking through Europe, and I wound up in Greece. And it was on the footsteps of the Acropolis that I had met this person in Germany, and we had traveled to Greece together. started talking to me about mythology and a little bit about astrology, which I didn't know anything about. And suddenly, some inner flame just lit inside of me. It's as if Athena in her temple, your stone temple up there on the hill, just shot a bolt of lightning from me and said, "Girl, this is yours. Take it." And I did, and I never looked back. And that was like 50 years ago. I'm celebrating 50 years now this year in astrology. And that changed my life more than anything, because I really had something I felt passionate about finally, and that I could believe in. And also that could teach me about myself. I was so curious to learn, who am I? What part do I play in this bigger world here? And I did feel, even at a young age, that I want to make a difference. I don't want to just go through the motions of working and reproducing. And people do make a difference, being great mothers and fathers, and working jobs where they're actually helping people. They do. But I wasn't feeling it. And again, I have learned that I have to trust my feelings, and my feelings said, I'm going this way. I'm going down this road. And again, I've never looked back, and it's been just one thrill after another, and one incredible life of meeting the most incredible people through it, and the people that are changing the world in very big ways that I've met through it. So, it's been a gift for me, really a gift. And I feel as if the hardships that I went through in childhood and the ways I felt left out or ignored or whatever, just not felt like I was part of it or important enough to be part of it, just totally flipped for me as I have been going through the years and progressing forward in my own learning. And astrology, initially I got into it to help myself, to find myself. Who am I? And I could see that it was really telling me who I was, truthfully. And I saw it, I felt it. But then in order to be able to help countless other people through it all these decades later has been the real gift.
Yeah, astrology is so powerful. And I think you've really helped shape the field because you've been doing it for such a long time. So you've sort of been one of those people who've helped to illuminate and carve that path. And I know if you're celebrating 50 years, it was quite a while ago that you started. And in 1974, that was a very brave path to forge. There wasn't a lot of people that had forged that path before, right? So you were really a pioneer in some ways. Not that you weren't learning from people who had done this many years, but where it maybe became a little bit more commonplace. How did you find that courage to say yes to something like that? Because that is not always an easy thing, right? And a lot of us maybe have that inkling or that passion, but we don't always say yes, or we don't always feel confident enough to do that. Where did that come from for you? And how were you able to be brave to forge that path?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like a lot of things I've done in my life have been very courageous. For one thing, going off to Europe, quitting a really good paying job in my 20s. I had the boyfriend, I had the nice apartment at the beach, I had a good paying job, and I had a future there if I wanted it. And I just said goodbye to it because it wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't like, oh, my life sucks because the boyfriend and I are having troubles. We weren't having troubles, or the boss is crazy and, demanding. It wasn't happening either. Everything was just working out fine, but I wasn't feeling it. And it was courageous because at that time I was 23 when I went off to Europe by myself with a ticket that didn't have a return. I mean, I had an open return. I said to my friends and my family, I don't know when I'm coming back. I suppose when I run out of money, I'll come back and I'll go back to work. I thought it was just going to be, well, I'm going to go see the sights and I'm going to see all these cities and I'm going to enjoy old Europe and all of that. I didn't realize what an education it was going to be and that it was actually going to offer me a career path. I don't know how I would have ever encountered that another way. Perhaps I would have, but I came home with something that now I have an aspiration. Now I have a goal. I'm going to dedicate myself to learning astrology and going to astrology schools and getting qualified to really do this. And yes, my community, my family, they all looked at me like, you are crazy. What are you doing? Why don't you just go back to the law firm and get a good, steady job? And I was like, because this is where my passion is. And yeah, I've done a lot of courageous things like that. Listen, in my 70s, I moved to Greece by myself after a serious illness that I'm still not fully recovered from. I'm not disabled or handicapped, but I have certain impairments, physical impairments. Like I lost my hearing in 1 ear that will never come back. And from this illness that I had several years ago. But yeah, that was another courageous act. I've done several things in my life like that, but it's more like I have to do it. I just have to go. I have to. It's that feeling that arises from within, that very powerful inner guidance that just says you have to do this. And I feel like my life is that one thing for sure. I didn't want to live a life where I felt like it was going to be routine, humdrum, boring, whatever, normal. I knew that didn't have much appeal for me. So, yeah, I kind of made my life, you could say courageous, but on the other hand, I think I'm designed for that, like knowing my human design, knowing my astrology, knowing these things. I learned that knowing my new star sign, that this all adds up to I've been doing exactly what I meant to do. And so that gave me another kind of interface of, yeah, girl, you're on the right track. Just keep going, just keep going with where you're going. You'll get there.
I think it's kind of amazing to be able to say yes like that and to go forward with it. And I do think that maybe knowing all of the astrology and how those stars are telling the story, right? That is very emboldening. But I still think it takes a lot of guts to move to Greece at 70 years old by yourself, and that's kind of something that I think is part of women arising, and being a bold woman is having that courage.
Yeah. And that was the other thing. When I was a child and a teenager, I was an avid reader. I loved stories about women who did things like that, who just went off, traveled the world, did all these amazing things in different places. People like Amelia Earhart, who was an aviator and, of course, disappeared tragically. But, other women like that were just that I thought, wow, in the face of all these men that have, this thing. The other thing about the culture, the law firm and the good pay and all of that was that women were not taken seriously. Most of the women there were either sexually harassed constantly. And I, as a young woman, was a victim of that as well. And certain things, jokes would be made, off-color jokes about women, about inappropriate things. Everybody would laugh. It's just a joke. But to me, it was like, there's something wrong with this. This is not the way things should be. It's not like I'm a prude or anything, but it was up to me to choose. It wasn't up to somebody else to say, because you're a woman, I have total access to you. It was like, no. If I say no, then it's no. If I say no, it doesn't mean maybe. If I say no, and this is how I've been able to influence sometimes younger women that I have been working with over the years is, because I haven't had children of my own. And if I had a daughter, for instance, I would have loved to be able to influence her in ways that my mother didn't with me and tell her things that I think are important for her to know ahead of time, not just don't have sex with a guy because you might get pregnant. That's what we were told. Don't go out and have sex because you might get pregnant. And then what? You'll be a disgrace to the whole family. But yeah, a lot of the culture was very misogynistic. And that bothered me. Again, going into astrology was probably one of the few careers that had more women than men at the time. There were a lot of female practitioners of astrology at the time that I got into it and in the subsequent decades. But then a weird observation that I made about it was that, and other women too, were that at most of the conferences, and I mean the big show conferences in organizations, 80% of the attendees were women and 80% of the presenters were men. Now that's changed in the last couple of decades, especially. The balance is being restored again. There are a lot more women being put up in prominent roles as speakers and keynote speakers. But at the time that in the 80s and the 90s, and I would say even up to the early 2000s, that was a real issue in astrology, that it was being supported by women. It was an industry being supported by women, and men were being given, again, the juiciest roles and being made the big celebrity astrologers and so forth. And I also have had the experience of having clients, women mostly, come to me and say that they got a reading with this person or that person that was supposed to be the big, celebrity astrologer, who just didn't really connect with them emotionally. They had all the technical things down perfectly, the technical parts of astrology. But as far as did they feel heard, did they feel connected to? And that's where I actually think today, one of the big things with whether we're talking about politics or in the culture or whatever industry you're in, I still question whether men actually do listen to women, whether they actually hear them. Because so much of the time they're placated or they're discounted or they're talked over. I don't know. It's just my perception of things. If that's the way it really is, still, I don't know, but I notice it.
So let's just maybe shift a little bit the conversation and going into when you found your feminine essence. When do you really connect it with that? As we were talking about the women in men's world, I'm sure you had the time that you said, this is me. I'm a full feminine. I understand this part of myself.
Yeah. I don't remember any aggressively vocal or demonstrative ways in which I have ever been told, because I'm a woman, I can't do this or I can't do that, or any opportunities actually denied to me. I think it's more subtle. I think it's more in what I said. that men don't always listen to women. And I had this conversation recently with some of my women friends. Why is it when we talk to each other, we understand exactly what you're saying? Well, we try to explain the same thing to our husbands. They're like, what's she talking about? It's like, you have to explain it again. You have to explain it in other words, and then in another way. But it's just easier talking among women to each other because it's a common connection we all have where we do tune into our feelings a little bit more and that we listen to our intuition more. But, again, I've used astrology to help determine how a person is operating. And not every woman is gifted with high levels of feeling or intuition. Some of them are very mental. Some of them are just operating totally on the mind or totally in the body, but maybe not so much in the feeling. So it can be somewhat colored by that. But I think in general, I would say, I think we've seen many, many examples in the world, in the culture, politics especially, where women are in the workplace, where women have to do 3 times the amount of work to achieve the same, let's say, pay grade as the man, or, the same credit for the job. And this I did experience when I was young because my mother worked. She chose, once I was a certain age, into school and the kids were out of the house, she wanted a job. She did not want to stay home. She wanted to work. And this was the early 60s when women were just starting to be given opportunities in the workplace. And she rose to a certain position in her firm. But again, she was doing 3 times the amount of work that the men were doing. And she was very popular amongst the customers. She was bringing in a lot of revenue for the company, but she wasn't getting the pay. Oh, well, you're married, you have a husband, he's a breadwinner. You're actually getting more money than any other woman's ever gotten, and this sort of thing, but it's like there's all these conditions that were said. And I observed that and I realized there's something wrong with this picture too.
Looking back at all your life, what would be a piece of advice you would give to women?
Life goes by very quickly, much more quickly than you think. So seize the moment, seize the opportunity, don't wait. If you want to move to Greece, move to Greece. Find a way to do it. If you want to go trekking in the Andes, go do it. If you want to study to be an astronaut, do it. I don't care how old you are or what your physical or whatever obstacles are. I find that the only real obstacles I have ever had in life are not physical. They're not impediments out there. Like you could say, well, I didn't have the money or, whatever. I think the biggest impediment has been the ones we impose on ourselves that block us, that keep us from going forward. That doesn't mean that I'm not at times fearful, and that, yes, I have displayed times in my life where I've been courageous and I've acted on courage or just, a burning idea that I had to follow. I did it. But there are times that I have been in threatening situations and I thought, okay, Arielle, you've done it. Now you've reached your limit. You've reached a point at which you're not going to get out. You're probably not going to get out of this one. And you may not get out of it alive even. But that only happened for a couple of minutes where I felt that way. And then eventually I did get out of it. But yes, to young women today, I would say, seize the moment, do what's in your heart to do. And this is what I teach mostly with the Venus star point. It's like that is a system that doesn't come from an ego-based part of astrology like sun sign astrology does or something like that. it really comes from Venus, which is not only the sacred feminine, but the heart center. And it's the heart center of the cosmos. And I call it the cosmic heartbeat, the Venus star. And so I'm always just reminding people to look, to not make decisions from up here, but to really go into your heart and see, what does your heart say? Because the mind is a trickster. It can lie to you. It can tell you all kinds of stories. It can make things up and say, oh, but it's going to go back and forth, back and forth. But the heart can't lie. It just doesn't have the capacity to lie. It's the truth teller. So that's another reason why I really like using that system and helping people. It's not easy. Our culture is not trained to make decisions from the heart.
Well, how do you cultivate and honor your divine feminine in your spiritual life, in your professional life?
Well, a lot of things. I've been connected to the divine feminine for many, many years now. I think I always had a spiritual inclination, but I was in spiritual groups in my 20s and even into my 30s, but they were male-run groups with gurus. And again, I felt like there was a sort of an imbalance there. After I learned astrology, when I learned about the asteroids, the goddesses, they filled the chart up with female archetypes that were completely missing from the rest of the chart before that. We only had two objects in the sky that were female, the moon and Venus. The rest of the planets were all male or archetype, even though we all have them. So when the asteroids came in, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it actually filled my chart in a way that really empowered me, gave me a sense of, wow, this is even better than what my chart looked like before. I could see these goddesses. At first, when I put them into my chart, I thought, what does this mean that I have all four of these asteroids in such prominent positions in my chart? What does that mean? Because I was seeing it like, you either have this goddess directing you or that one, but I've got all four of them. What does that mean? Well, it's a sisterhood. It means that the powerful, the divine feminine, the archetypal feminine is strongly stated within me. And yeah, I've always taken offense to when women have been treated unfairly or talked about in a negative way. And it's always been for me a way of, tuning into the divine feminine has always been kind of a second nature for me. So my travels have taken me to places like southern France, where encountering, for instance, Mary Magdalene and the whole divine feminine there in France, and the whole Mary mysteries and the untold story about Mary. And then there was of course, the asteroids. And then the Venus star point came along, which is, again, the divine feminine in the sky. But I've always felt like wanting to use those as guideposts, as, kind of directives or guidance, I'd say. There's a Venus star mudra that I do, which is also connecting the sky to the body and through Venus and things like that.
That's amazing. I know because I've done it with you, and I know how it feels when we do the mudra of the Venus star point. I've experienced that, and also the asteroids, and in my chart. And you've always been very generous to me with that. So, yeah, it's an amazing to have you with us to really share all this experience. Now, I learned a little bit more about you that I didn't know. A couple more things. So, thank you.
Astrology is just one mechanism or one tool. You could be doing all kinds of, any kind of work, which I know you do, Zeffie, but I'm sure in each of our lives, we're helping people in a variety of different ways. And we're coming to the same, place. We're going to the same place. My lens is through astrology. I'm not saying it's the only way. It was a way for me. But I think we have to realize that we are not here alone. We're connected, that we need these powerful connections. We need each other. And I think now more than ever, I've been saying this for a long time, but I really mean now more than ever, just the way the world is going. And I think the great disappointment I have in with the world right now is that, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 60s, let's say, there was a huge awakening and an arising and of consciousness on women's rights, civil rights, human rights of all kinds. And I thought we were really going somewhere with that. I thought we were really making progress. And we had made, as I said, a lot of progress. But I think I'm still a little disheartened to see that the world, or at least the country, is still in a place of fear about all of that and negativity. And that that my hope was that we were all growing. We were all becoming more enlightened and more expansive in our tolerance and our acceptance for one another. But today, if you look at social media, people are just, behaving very badly. They're screaming at each other. They're hating each other. They're criticizing, they're not listening to other people. That's what's disheartening right now. But it doesn't make me want to stop. It's like, we got to keep going. It's not like we're done. We're never done.
No, we're not. We are never done. And I think that especially for you who can see the sort of universe, right? Literally in the stars and what that whole gamut looks like. I love your insight. I love your perspective. I love the journey that you've taken us on today. And just to see it through your eyes has been really exciting for us. I know a lot of our listeners are hearing about what you've been through and the work that you do, and I'd love for them to have a chance to connect to you. So what would be the best way for them to connect to you?
Oh, yeah. So they can go to my website, which is sophiavenus.com. And also all my links to social media are at the bottom. I'm on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. So all those things. But it's really been a great privilege for me to not only discover what I discovered by accident, but to have it become such a fulfilling and meaningful part of my life. To find out who I am, my place in the universe, and how the cosmos, how things are operating, how the bigger picture is working, how the cycles are working. And it feels nice to know that when things are happening, I have sort of a built-in way of going, oh yeah, well, okay, this is what's happening in the cosmos right now. So I feel like I've got a deeper understanding of that. But I also just feel like it's been a great privilege to have been given this opportunity to do this kind of work and to have so many people come to it, not just to me personally, but to the system in general, the whole branch, the whole field of astrology in general, how it's just been growing and how it's been making people aware of also their place in the cosmos and what's going on for them.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with us today on so many different levels. And I really encourage you all to go to sophiavenus.com to learn about some of the work that Arielle does and to connect with her and gain some of this wisdom and to find out about astrology, because like Arielle said, it's a super powerful system that can really illuminate a lot of things for you. So we are just so thrilled to have had you today as our guest and are so grateful for all that you shared with us today.
It's been my privilege to be here, and I really love what you're doing.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for tuning in to Woman Arising, where we celebrate the resilience, wisdom, and power of women on the rise. Remember, when women rise, we all rise. If you're ready to embark on your journey of empowerment, sign up for our mailing list at womenarising.com and join our community of strong, inspiring women. To connect with Zephy Devi and ignite your inner fire, visit zephydevi.com and sign up to get your free tantric meditation. Let Zephy illuminate your path, helping you discover the magic and power that reside within you. To connect with Kathy Hartenstein and claim your spectacularness, visit createmorebliss.com and sign up for a free 30-minute consult call where she can help you break through your emotional blocks to success. Let Kathy be your guide on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you for being a part of the Woman Arising community. Together, let's continue to uplift, inspire, and empower women everywhere. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and keep embracing the divine feminine power that resides within you.
You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer.